And at this point in time, there is still serious concern as to why the casual unit is still not open, despite promises having been made. And we joined on the line this morning by Jack Bloom, who is the DA's Gauteng Shadow Health MEC. Jack, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good to be with you as always.
Yes, now clearly we've seen the health department making the promises with regard to the casualty unit, and we know that the Johannesburg Academic Hospital performs a very, very important function. And there are concerns. There are concerns that promises are made, promises are not kept, and the casualty unit is still not open, Jack.
Well, absolutely. I asked the Gauteng legislature to the MEC for Health last year, when is the casualty unit going to be open? And she said January. Well, January came and went. Then we were told it's going to be in March. Then we were told it's going to be in April. Now we're in May. And the casualty unit is still not open. I must tell you, this is devastating for both patients and staff. What happens is that other hospitals are flooded with casualty patients. This is accidents and emergencies. And at Helen Joseph Hospital, it's too terrible for words. Casualty patients are lying in corridors on the floor. It takes them days before they're admitted. So I think it's extremely disappointing that yet again a deadline for the reopening of the casualty at our major hospital in this province is not met, and it's still closed.
Jack, have any reasons been given as to why the delay and why the reopening has become a moving target?
Well, they now say that because of thefts and vandalism, and that the fact that the CT scan is not working because the CPU was stolen, cables were stolen, there was vandalism. I really question this because they spend 40 million rand a year. Can you believe it? 40 million rand a year on security at the Charlotte Maxeke hospital, and still we have thefts and vandalism. So there really needs to be accountability. But of course, there's probably corruption involved, and I believe that three people have already been arrested and criminal charges been laid against them. But we need to see this in context. This hospital had that terrible fire in April last year. It's more than a year ago. And because of sheer incompetence by the provincial government, particularly the Gauteng Infrastructure Development Department, they weren't able to repair it and reopen it. And now the provincial government's given it over to the National Health Department, which is now responsible for a provincial hospital, and still they can't get their act together. So, I really think it's time to bring in people like the gift of the givers who know how to deal with disaster situations, private sector expertise, and I mean, government should just admit that they can't do the job, and we need to get people who can do the job and reopen this vital unit as soon as possible.
Well, interesting you mentioned gift of the givers because we know what has happened with KwaZulu Natal and the flood as well, and in terms of flood relief, and we heard organizations like Gift of the Givers mentioned to basically manage the situation over there. And again, as you mentioned, the key issue here is gross incompetence, and as you mentioned, it has been the provincial department's responsibility, but now we're looking at national, and it just appears as if it's just becoming messier by the day, Jack.
Well, absolutely, because it's not just the casualty department. It used to be a very busy department. This is a specialist hospital. I don't think you can substitute it with other hospitals, in fact. But what about the cancer patients? What about the heart patients? Most terrible of all actually is actually the mental health patients. You would have thought that after life has said many, there would have been extra attention paid to the plight of psychiatric patients. But the unit at Charlotte Maxeke Hospital for psychiatric patients is also closed. Helen Joseph is now flooded with psychiatric patients, and it's too terrible for words. There's there isn't adequate security, so staff are being attacked. Psychiatric patients are not in secure facilities. They're not getting the treatment that they really need. And I think we need answers. And I'm sorry to say, I think the time for excuses is over. Let's get people who can do the job. We've got wonderful expertise in our country. Give the Givers is got an international reputation. We've got other aid agencies. Why don't we get them involved? They know what they're doing, and I'm sure they could reopen the whole of Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. Remember, now we're told that towards the end of next year it will be open, but they keep missing deadlines. We can't afford to have a major hospital like this closed forever.
Yes, and also I think what is important, and just 2 days ago, I actually spoke to someone who was a heart patient, and he mentioned to me, he says, one hospital you don't want to be in is the government hospital. And, he was highly critical of the type of treatment that he received. But also at the same time, as you mentioned, Helen Joseph Hospital, when one looks at that casualty department, it is basically bursting at its seams. And this is what we've come to learn, where patients are actually squeezed in corridors, they're sitting in chairs, they're sitting for long hours before being admitted to wards, and this clearly is not acceptable at all, Jack.
Well, absolutely. I get calls very frequently from patients, relatives of patients, and I mean, they're in great distress. And of course, lives are lost. That's what's happening. And we appear to be having a resurgence of the COVID-19 virus. And can you imagine if you're already sick and injured and you're crammed together with others at Helen Joseph Hospital, the risk of infection goes up. So I'm sorry to say, this is just a terrible disaster. We need to hear from the provincial health department. So why are we not hearing a firm announcement? I was speaking to a doctor not so long ago at Helen Joseph Hospital, and they were looking forward to the reopening of Charlotte Maxeke Casualty to take the stress off them. Helen Joseph Hospital didn't get extra resources to cope with extra patients. South Rand Hospital is also getting extra patients, the Hillbrow Community Health Centre, and they're not getting the treatment that they really need. So we await this announcement, and I really think government needs to acknowledge that they really don't have the expertise to reopen this hospital fully, calling the people who know how to do the job, and for the sake of us all, get this hospital running again.
Yes, Jack. And it does appear that there is reluctance on the part of the government to call on private sector expertise, because if this is the situation as far as the casualty goes, we know that they've got certain deadlines with regard to other sections of the hospital. For instance, they're talking about Block 1 expected to be fully functional by March 2023, Blocks 4 and 5 by November 2023. And the scary thought is, this could also be a moving target, just as the casualty unit has been.
Absolutely, it's a very scary thought. Now, there was a letter written to Professor Cyril Ramaphosa in early December last year, and the proposal there by the head of medicine was that let's have a task team with private and public people involved, and get this thing moving. The University of Witwatersrand is also involved because medical students train there. We've got so much expertise at the University of the Witwatersrand. I think government needs to be humble, admit what they can do and what they can't do, and getting the people who can do the job, but also just find out why we're spending 40 million rand every year on security at this hospital, and they can't prevent vandalism and theft. I mean, that's another question. Of course, there's always corruption involved, and I think we got to get to the root of it, and then we must start looking at the Gauteng Health Department as a whole. Corruption scandal after another. It doesn't stop. They stole the PPE money. Part of the reason why there was a delay in reopening the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital is because some people saw the money there and they also wanted to steal it. It's just a terrible situation where urgently needed money that should go to save lives. When people see this money, they think, oh, it'll go to my own pocket. So I think we've just got to cut out all the rot, from top to bottom. Put in the best people. I'm not impressed with the CEO of Charlotte Maxeke Hospital either. I think there's an accountability issue there as well. And it's more than a year later. Why don't we know what the cause of the fire is? How can we not know, what caused the fire? And why weren't there proper prevention measures? I mean, there's lots of rumors at the hospital that it was in fact arson. That would be unbelievable that people would do that to the hospital. But apparently, the motivation was to cover up corruption in the storeroom. Now, these are rumors. The problem is we've had other fires at other hospitals. We had a fire at the head office of the Gauteng Health Department, the Bank of Lisbon building. We still don't have any answers. So, I think there's a cover up. There's something terrible there, and they don't want us to know it. So let's have complete openness and transparency, and do what needs to be done to save lives and reopen this hospital fully.
Yes, Jack, and we had a fire in Parliament as well, just to add to all the fires that we've been having. Jack, as always, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate you taking time out, talking to us this morning. All the best to you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Jack Bloom, the DA's DA's Gauteng Shadow Health MEC with us this morning with regard to the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, the casualty unit still not open despite promise after promise. We come back and we will be talking with Mohammed Batman Ismail. We're talking with Itequini Secure, and it is Crime Talk. It is our weekly edition coming up next.